To interpolate, the Honorable Minority Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel.
Senator Grace Poe, the sponsor of the measure, as well as our distinguished minority floor leader, Senator Coco Pimentel, are both recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good
You may
afternoon.
proceed, Senator Pimentel.
Before Senator Pimentel.
Senator Poe?
Yes. Good afternoon again. And before we begin our deliberations on the general principles, I'd like to acknowledge the DBCC team for their presence again today. This representation is now ready to take more questions. Less, hopefully, but go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We accomplished a lot yesterday, so I'll try my best no longer to cover what has been covered yesterday. But I think yesterday gave us the official results of the election in the United States, and then all of us, and I believe the peso to dollar exchange rate immediately reacted. Mr. President, is that correct?
Yes, it did.
It did. So that's why I asked that, because in making the budget, we made some assumptions, and one of the assumptions would be the foreign exchange rate. Ang sabi sa President's report, the President's budget message, we are assuming the Philippine to US dollar in 2025 to range from 55 to 58. So how was it yesterday, immediately after the results of the US election?
Mr. President, for now, normally we really look at the entire year average, not just on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
For now, we're still at 58, below 58.
If we average it, but just for our information, what happened yesterday? How did the peso react to the dollar after the victory of Trump?
58.7.
President? How was that? What was the 58.83? Okay. So 58.80. So ganyan po ka importante ang mga world events. Some of our assumptions are affected. What if, ito lang po question, what if the peso further deteriorates against the US dollar?
Sorry, could you repeat that, sir?
What if the peso further deteriorates against the US dollar? What would be our anticipated effect on the 2025 budget, and how should we defend against such an event, Mr. President?
For every peso depreciation, Mr. President, there's an 11.3 billion additional revenue and a disbursement of 3.9 billion and a budget balance of 7.4 billion. Meaning, if the peso depreciates, we collect more revenues with the Bureau of Customs.
Okay, but that's from the point of view of the government revenues, and I understand that since we're talking about the budget, our resource persons will limit themselves to government revenues. But how does it affect our people? Hindi ba the cost of living will also be more expensive?
Of course, with the depreciation of the peso, there's also an effect because we import a lot of goods,
A lot of things, yeah.
and the cost will be a little higher. But Mr. President, also let's not forget that the buying power also, some of our citizens, countrymen who are dependent on OFW remittances will be encouraged to spend more also because of the favorable exchange rate on their part. But of course, there's always the pro and the con, and for us, it's a matter of making having all these contingencies in place.
When we compute the GDP, the GDP is composed of four basic elements: domestic consumption, government spending, investments, and then net exports. Or this is a fourth category? Are we positive with net exports? What is in our GDP equation? Is it a positive or a negative?
We have a trade deficit. That's not surprising. A current account deficit and a balance of payment surplus. In layman's terms, there's still more dollars coming in than going out.
Can we?
That increases our gross national reserves.
And the dollars can come from remittances and, of course, loans. Tama?
Yes, remittances, BPO, tourism, and investments.
Don't we include the proceeds of loans in the balance of payments equation? Yes, that's correct. Okay. What's the answer? Can the chairperson state for the record the answer?
For the record, the sources of income for our dollar reserves in spite of the increase in the dollar value against the peso, are remittances from the OFWs, the service sector, which is the BPO included, tourism, and investments.
So for a country like the Philippines where net exports is negative, meaning to say, ano tawag doon? Trade deficit, should we desire the depreciation of the peso versus the dollar, or should we desire more the appreciation of the peso versus the dollar?
It depends. Of course, it's a balance of all of the factors that are affecting the economy. Sometimes for exports, it's more appealing for buyers abroad that the peso is weaker than their currency. On the other hand, as we already discussed earlier, with a weaker currency, it's also more expensive for us to be able to procure imports. So that's why, again, we go back to we always try to focus on strengthening investments in our economy.
Is that the thinking of the economic managers? Given the Philippine situation, na trade deficit tayo, what is to be desired? A strengthening of the peso against the dollar, or a weakening of the peso against the dollar?
We want stability and predictability.
Correct.
And
Want more investments?
and more investments. We want to manufacture more to sell to the world,
Correct. Okay.
or service exports.
Yes, thank you kasi andito yata lahat yan sa President's message. That's why I want to go over them one by one if we are really achieving them, Mr. President. Teka muna, we make of record that we have allowed the DBM Secretary to not to be here today, no? Madam
Yeah.
Chairperson, because she was here yesterday, so okay na po yun sa atin.
Although
Because-
she's still represented here.
yes, the
with
DBM is here with... Who's representing the DBM?
Undersecretary Janet Abuel.
Yes.
Who came highly recommended by the DBM Secretary.
Yes. And then the BSP governor is also not with us today, and he was also not with us yesterday. But I think it's because of a previously scheduled trip abroad. Is he
Yes.
abroad? Is he abroad?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. President.
I remember the time when Senator Recto was still with us. He was able to extract from the budget the total expenses for telecommunications. I think I still remember parang a press release from Senator Recto about the telecommunication expenses of the government. Do we know the expenses? I will not be asking about that. Ang question is, do we know the expense of the government for foreign trips?
For foreign trips.
Yes.
Yes.
Kasi, Mr. President, yung ating schedule na bulabog sa mga foreign trips ng ating mga heads of agencies, sabi ko ba, sobrang daming foreign trips.
Actually, for the record, Mr. President, I understand that we have to keep our foreign relations robust, but I would have wanted, and I'm sure our colleagues share this concern, that when they know it's the budget season, that they prioritize the discussions here. They know it comes, more or less, we release the calendar early on, and yet many of them are appealing that can we move the schedule to this time or that time. Most of them we understand because it's necessary, but others, I don't even think that it's a crucial trip for them.
So can we extract that figure? How much in the national budget
We are
is
getting
about
that
foreign
figure right
trips?
now.
Total. Okay na po yung total.
Okay, total, yeah, that's 24 billion local and foreign travel.
Ginagaya ko lang po si Senator Recto. Alam ko yung dating tinanong niya sa telecommunication expenses. Sige po.
Yeah.
But at any rate, sana po na kasi we don't want to break our rule that the head of agency must at least be before us so that to show the interest of the head on the defense of their budget. Mr. President, ito po yung President's budget message, no? Paragraph 2. The World Bank, in its Philippines Economic Update for June 2024, noted the Philippines' robust growth. So that's how the World Bank defined our growth. May we know the growth rate, which was described by the World Bank as a robust growth? What was that growth rate?
It's an average of 6.1% growth in the last two and a half years.
Okay, kasi para lang definition of terms lang po to, robust na pala yan. Diba sa robust? Yes.
We're the second highest in the region, Mr. President. We stated this earlier.
Yes, okay.
Top 5 in the world.
As far as growth is concerned, okay. Pero, and I also remember the President's SONA. Sabi yata ni Presidente doon, what is the growth rate to the ordinary Filipino? So may we know why we should be glad that we have high growth rates? What is that to the ordinary Filipino, Mr.
Mr. President, I think that Of course, we're still not where we want to be, but definitely poverty has decreased, together also with the support the government has been giving them, and employment has increased. We cannot reduce poverty without growing the economy, but we have a figure also of the number of people who were lifted out of poverty in the past year. Poverty incidence in 2021 is 18%. But in 2023, it was 15.1%. So that means 2.4 million people were lifted out of poverty. This is because also of the continued increase in our growth. The upper middle income status is achievable in 2025 because we've been steadily increasing from 2023, 2024, and now $4,256 in 2023 for capita income, and then 4,363 in 2024. So there's a slight increase in income and a decrease in poverty.
That's per capita income, which
Yes,
is also just a figure, Mr. President. That's probably GDP divided by population, I think. So I think ulitin ko po yung na-raise ko during the committee hearing. Is there a way to measure how the ordinary Filipino benefits from growth rate?
Working today,
There are more jobs created. 50 million people are working today.
these are jobs in Europe,
We are creating 1 million jobs a year.
5% on the wages.
Roughly 65% are salary and wages, which is an indication of a growing middle class. As I mentioned, also the upper middle income status that we are about to achieve by next year.
So that's why yesterday si Senator Joel naman went into definitions. So we really have to be defining when are you poor, what's the definition of poverty, and then when are you employed. Yun yung mga
Mr.
balik tayo ng balik sa ganun because those are the figures being used. So
For the poverty
yes,
poverty threshold?
yes, how is
perhaps?
that defined?
Okay, so in
Ma'am, can I cut you?